Welcome back to another lecture video. Today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about meiosis. And so up until this point we have talked about the cell cycle, looking at all the different phases of the cell cycle and understanding each one. You've also dived into mitosis, looking at regulated cell division, what types of cells go through mitosis, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump in, we're going to dive into meiosis. You're going to realize that meiosis is very similar to mitosis. Okay, but before we dive into all that is to come with meiosis, we're going to talk about just a couple things first. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is diploid and what it means. So a body cell in an adult fruit fly has a total of 8 chromosomes. So just like in mitosis, right, we're looking at a body cell. This is a somatic cell. It's got a total of 8 chromosomes. Okay, and so 4 of the chromosomes come from its male parent, and 4 comes from its female parent. And so what this means is that these two sets, so the one that comes from mom and the one that comes from dad, in other words, 4 pairs, okay, these pairs of chromosomes are called homologous, or in other words, they're called homologs, okay? And so what this means is that each of the 4 chromosomes from the male parent have corresponding chromosomes from the female parent. So if you look over here, okay, we have a singular chromosome here, as well as another chromosome here, okay? Let's imagine that this blue one is from your dad, and this one is from your mom, okay? Each of these 2 chromosomes code for the exact same thing. So this might be eye color, this might contribute to hair color, this could code for any number of things, okay? But each of them code for the exact same things, or these segments on each chromosome called genes. We're going to unpack what that means further in genetics. But after DNA replication, if you remember, DNA replication, I call it the butterfly effect by Travis Scott, right? Because Travis and I are best friends. But if you look on the right-hand side, we know that we duplicate that DNA, okay? These are still homologs. So again, this is still that chromosome from dad, and this is still that chromosome from mom, but we know that they are in a duplicated form called sister chromatids. But yet this is still 2 chromosomes over here, as well as 2 chromosomes over here, and they are pairs, okay? Each of these is going to code for the same information, or the same trait. So continuing with diploid, a cell that contains both sets of homologous chromosomes, or in other words, the one that contains the 2 sets, that's what we call diploid. And this is easy to remember because di means what? Di means 2. So 2 sets. The diploid number of chromosomes is sometimes represented by the symbol 2n. So you might see that pop up in the future, so make sure you write that down. And so if we're going back to the fruit fly example, the diploid number is 8, which means that it receives 4 chromosomes from its male parent, 4 chromosomes from its female parent. And so we can write it as an equation, where the equation equals 2n, or excuse me, the equation is 2n equals 8, where n represents the single set of chromosomes found in a sperm or egg cell. So just to give you a little bit of further information, jumping away from the fruit fly, if you look over here, we know that diploid means 2. So on the bottom down here, okay, this represents a body cell that would have 6 chromosomes. Again, we don't know what maybe organism this could be, but let's say that there's another organism out there that has 6 total chromosomes. Well, the haploid number would be 3. In other words, the haploid cells would contain 3 chromosomes. This slide does a really good job of explaining haploid and diploid more in depth. Okay, haploid, you're going to hear me say it in the future, but it means half. Or in other words, it's 1 copy of each chromosome. Okay, and you can see down here that these are non-homologous chromosomes, meaning that they are not countered by the male or the female part. Excuse me, I'm kind of going through a cold, so you'll have to bear with me. Whereas the diploid number, we know that this is 2 copies of each chromosome. So over here, it tells you on the bottom, we have a maternal and a paternal origin, meaning one of these chromosomes in this pair came from mom and one came from dad. Same thing here, one came from mom, one came from dad, as well as the green chromosomes over here. So haploid cells, okay? if you can't get the hint already, okay, the two examples of haploid cells that we have in our bodies, some of us have sperm and some of us have eggs, okay? And so some cells contain only a single set of chromosomes and therefore a single set of genes. These are called haploids. So again, means one set or one copy, okay? The gametes of sexually reproducing organisms are haploid. So sex cells have one set, also known as haploid cells. Okay, you also might hear these referred as gametes. Okay, so here you go. What are gametes for humans? This is your sperm and egg cell. And so again, going all the way back to our fruit fly example, the fruit fly gametes, their haploid number is 4, which again is n by itself in our equation. And so again, this is just an overview. I threw this up here so that you can see just how detailed the human sperm and the human egg are. And you can see that there is a nucleus in each one of these. So remember, these are still animal cells, so they're going to have a nucleus. The biggest difference between a body cell and then a sex cell, in this case either a sperm or an egg, is that they contain half the information. Okay, so over here on the left-hand side in a human, an egg cell has 23 chromosomes. On the right-hand side, a sperm, you guessed it, on average is going to have 23 chromosomes. And so what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to go through each one of the phases of meiosis and how they relate to mitosis.